I have a Husqvarna 725 all-wheel drive with a broken transmission, and in the next 15 minutes the plan is to put that new transmission from parts tree inside. But first I'm going to clean it. It has a built-in water hose connection. I've never used it before. This is 6 years old. I'm going to hook a hose up and see how clean I can get it. As you can see right now, it's pretty dirty under there. Notice I can run the mower without running the blade by releasing this handle, and I can start it and accelerate with this handle. Now we'll see if it's cleaner. See if it's cleaner, any cleaner under there. If not, we'll just shoot it with a jet. It's a little bit cleaner under there. This machine is unique in that we have a rear bag which goes on very easily. Hooks right there and it's on. Or you can mulch in standard mode. Or you can put this on and side throw. 22 inches, self-propelled, 4-wheel drive, pretty nice. I'm draining oil out, and then I'll drain the gas out so don't make a mess on the driveway when I tip it over to work on it. Okay, the part that I'm replacing is this transmission right here. It has a pulley on the top that connects to the belt that runs around the engine and around the front wheel drive, which is a whole different system, very similar system. Rear wheel drive, this transmission, one wheel there, belt drive up there, and then the axle goes into the wheels. So I'm going to take the wheel off first. That's a 14mm nut. Right there is the original transmission. It rotates to tighten the belt, and the part that's broken, here's the new one. The parts that's broken, this broke off. This is where the actuator that causes it to rotate is supposed to attach. That's gone. First wheel is off. You can see there's a gear reduction system there, and also there's a gear reduction system inside that box. It's a differential and gear reducing, plus the pulley. The belt pulley is gear reducing the engine speed down to wheel speed. The wheel lifts off. This back piece lifts off along with the bushing. And there's the drive system. Here's a slip ring that will go right in here, which goes right in there. So that should work out really easily. Okay, split ring is off, gear is off, and then there's a cotter pin that locks the rotation of the wheel to the axle. I need to pull that out next. There's the notches on the other underside of the gear that's set right there. So the gear rotates when the axle rotates. I just pushed on one end, pull on the other end, pin comes out. This whole assembly here is going to have to come off. This is a height adjustment. This has to come off so the axle can come out. There's a slot here and a slot down here so the axle can come away. I'm going to take this side off rather than this side. I think either side will let the axle loose. I may have to take both off, but the other side's closer to the transmission, so I'm going to work with that side. This is a height adjusting tool right here. Rotate that down out of the way, then you can see two bolts that hold this thing on. Those two are 13mm, so that gets that off easily. Take this screw off of here and get this thing out. It's holding them together. So I took this screw out of here, which undoes that bracket, which lets this come loose. So now the two sides, these side pieces are separate from each other, but when this moved away, that also unhooked the back door, the bagger chute door, which is good, because I need that for access to get to the pulley up inside there. There's the door completely off. It has a swivel point and a spring on each end. It's not a full swivel. It can be slid on from one point, and then it has a spring. And then over here is the axle. It's going to go on this axle when it goes back on, and then the spring catches in this little clip on each side. And here's my transmission. It's loose here, it's not loose there, and there's still a spring hooked up to it here that pulls it out of gear, and then the pulley is inside there somewhere. There's the pulley with the belt on it right there. I decided to take both sides of this off so I can get it free, so that the rock shield is gone, and I took off this off the other side, so now this bracket can go away from the axle here, this bracket goes away from the axle there, and the axle can come straight out the bottom when I get the belt off. Okay, I've propped it up so there's no weight on these parts. This has already slipped off of the axle. This is ready to slip off of the axle there. So now the transmission is free, except there's a little tiny spring in here. I need to unhook that, and then it's still hooked on the belt. I need to figure out how to get that loose. A couple plastic guides here for when I put it back in position. It sits right there. There's a retainer, a belt retainer, screwed right into here. It keeps the belt from slipping off the pulley, which is good, but it's also keeping the belt from slipping off the pulley. I'll have to figure that out. It attaches from the top side, and I don't have access to the top side, and it's a solid deck. I'll have to figure that out. Well, I'm right here. Here you can see there is the end of the cable that causes it to go into gear. That end of that cable goes into this hole in a new transmission. This triangular piece is the part that broke off. hence the repair. I think I'm going to have to take this shroud off to get to the belts, to loosen the belt to get the transmission out. But while I'm here, look at this blade. It's got an extreme rake on it, which creates the vacuum, which makes the mulching so good. And the large teeth do a lot of agitation to help chop up and throw around the bits of grass that are cut over and over and over in the mulching operation. I decided to take the blade off. That's a 15 millimeter. Now would be a good time to sharpen it if I hadn't just done that last week before my repair and the transmission broke. I actually tried to fix it with epoxy and it didn't hold. Now I'm going to take this shroud off. The shroud is a 13. A couple of screws on the top right here, right there, that help hold that shroud on. Now with those two screws off, this comes away, and now you can see the airy drive system. This belt goes down around the engine, comes up here, goes around and goes around this idler, goes the rear transmission, goes under this idler, goes the front transmission, comes back around. This one is driving it looks like it's actually another, no, this is the belt that pulls the brake on. It seems that the only way I'm going to get to the top of this side to put that in, put that belt behind it, and then the same thing happens on the bottom side, is if I take this thing off, which lets the whole transmission come away from the mower. And so I'm going to be working on that piece. That plastic piece has several mounting points and will take several minutes. Looks like two screws on the side, one here on each side, and then these two back here. We'll take that piece off. Okay, with those two screws loose, took off a screw here and a screw here that held this in place. Now this comes out, and there's the transmission, and there's the belt, there's the retainers. Now I can get to them on the top side, put the new one in, and reverse the process. The pulley screws onto the axle, and the axle is freewheeling, so I need to figure out how to hold the axle from turning while I unbolt it. I'm going to try a vice grip, which will be kept from turning by these belt retainers. This is a 15 millimeter. That worked. The pulley is coming off the axle. Now I can take these retainers off and move them to the other transmission. There's the new transmission with the belt retainer. There's a piece of junk. Now I'll put the pulley on, get the belt on, reassemble. ahead and put the belt on the pulley and then screwed the pulley onto the shaft. That made it easy to get in behind these fittings here. Now, while I'm here at this point, I'm going to hook up this cable, the shifter cable, because later it's hard to do. So now the shifter cable is hooked up. Now I'm going to put the shrouds back in and reassemble. When you're reassembling things, here's the shift cable that goes on here. Here's the spring that attaches up here on this belt retainer and then attaches on this piece of plastic. That spring is what pulls it out of gear and the cable pulls it in gear. Okay, rear shroud is on now, belt's in place, springs in place, cable's attached. Now I'm going to put on the bottom shroud. I had to flip it over to get the other screw on the other side of this. Okay, belt cover's back on. That was this one nut here, 2 screws on the top side attach in there. Okay, I've already reattached this side over here. Axle goes down through it. I'll put this axle on this side. Centered up. Now I'm ready to attach this arm piece on here and then put the back door on. Okay, got these 2 bolts here attached. Hold this together, that traps the axle, also traps this in position. I'll hook the spring up in a little bit. This throttle spring, drive shaft spring is hooked up. The shifter cable is hooked up, so we're in good shape there. Now I'll put wheels on. I've got a vice grip on this end so that it doesn't drop down and I can work on this end. Okay, I'm ready to reassemble this wheel. This goes like that. The pin goes in the axle like that. The gear goes on the pin like that. The retainer goes in here like that. And the wheel goes on and I tighten it. I'll snap that ring on. Okay, got the other wheel back on. Drive system's all in place. Belt cover's in place. Just need to hook the spring up to the back door and put the blade on and the rock guard. So for $100 in repairs and a 4-hour job, I got a $500 machine working again for another 6 years.